Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to part 2 season 1D of What If Deku Was Trained by Aizawa. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. Aizawa walked into class 1 surprised to see that his students were all seated and quiet. Good, it seems you guys do know how to act responsibly. Aizawa commented as he walked to the center of the room. Now today is a bit of a surprise as we are going off campus on a field trip. Wait, really? Alright, I wonder where we will go. What do you think, Midoriya? The class began yet another unhinged group of ramblings, but were quickly silenced by the activation of Eraserhead's quirk. You all have 15 minutes to get dressed into your hero costumes and meet me by the entrance of the UA building. Aizawa spoke in his usual tired voice, not giving the class a chance to protest before turning and leaving the class. 15 minutes later, the whole class was lined up in an orderly fashion, with Ida, who had been elected the class representative just a day prior, sorting them out and getting them to enter the bus quietly. Shortly after this, the bus was well and on its way to their destination, each student sitting quietly in their seats as an awkward air engulfed the bus. So, any ideas on where we are going? Kaminari asked in a desperate attempt to wave away the awkward silence. Maybe we are going to some hero agency. If that were the case, then we would have been asked to give our parents a note asking for their permission. Then maybe we are going to another school for a joint class. No, that wouldn't make sense. Maybe we are going to some kind of training camp. Slowly, a conversation picked up as most of the students began to chime in on the possibilities of where they could be headed. Midoriya, what is your relationship with Sensei Aizawa? Sue's sudden question caused the class to go silent and Midoriya to go blank. Sorry, please repeat that. What is your relationship with Sensei Aizawa? Sue repeated. Actually, I am kinda interested too, Mido. Well, Midoriya hesitated, looking to the front of the bus at Aizawa, who was sleeping upright in his chair. Yeah, Midoriya, you guys seem so similar. It's nothing really. Sweat began to trickle down Midoriya's forehead. His classmates' growing intrigue put a weight on his chest. I am kinda curious as well. Uraraka added. Fine. Ever since I was young, I've idolized Sensei Aizawa as the best hero in the world. I found it amazing how he was able to beat villains left, right, and center, all the while remaining ambiguous and without the use of a flashy quirk. Midoriya glanced at Bakugo, who had argued a lot with Midoriya about who was the better hero in between Aizawa and All Might. Then when I was 12, I decided to take a shortcut to a grocery store, and I just so happened to walk past a serial killer on the loose. Aizawa-sensei saved me and the rest is history. Midoriya smiled, electing to not tell his classmates about his tutelage under Aizawa. So that's why you dress like him, Izuku. You're a hardcore fanboy. Kaminari raised his voice. Well, I suppose you can say that. Izuku replied awkwardly as the rest of the class began to mingle amongst themselves, now that the conversation was over. Intermission. Honey. This video was sponsored by Honey. Honey is a free browser add-on available on Google, Opera, Firefox, Safari. If it's a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these big sites is click that little orange button, and it will scan the entire internet and find discount codes for you. It takes 2 clicks to install Honey. Now anytime you check out, Honey will scan the whole internet and find coupon codes for you. If there is a coupon code, they will find it, and if there's not a coupon code, you can rest assured that you are getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save so much money on your online shopping, doing nothing. There's no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks, 10 million people use it, 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. Use the link in the description to start saving money now. Continuation. Alright class, we have arrived. Class 1 stood outside of a massive dome. Aizawa and the pro hero known as 13 stood in front of the doors. Where is All Might? He said he'd be 10 minutes late. He overused his quirk again. Then we will have to start without him. The two turned to face the class. Alright students, let's get started. Follow me. 13 turned around and opened the doors to the facility. She then walked in with the class following as she had instructed. Now, as some of you might know, I am the pro hero 13 and today I will be instructing you guys. The hero talked as she walked, the students staring in awe at the view granted to them as soon as they entered the building. This is the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, the USJ for short. It is filled with every natural disaster known to mankind, and you students will be assigned various tasks in each simulation. 13 stopped walking and turned around to face the students of Class 1A. Does anyone have any questions? The hero looked through the students one by one, noticing that Izuku had an almost exact copy of Aizawa's hero costume. Yes, ma'am. Momo raised her hand. The hero gestured for her to talk. Is this a heroics class? If so, where is All Might? Instead of letting 13 reply, Aizawa immediately replied for her. All Might ran into some personal problems. He will arrive shortly. The students all nodded and Momo thanked Aizawa. Shortly after, Kirishima moved forward a few paces. Whoa, that's cool. You guys even got fake villains. Aizawa and 13 looked at each other in confusion before turning around to see what Kirishima was talking about. Those aren't fake villains. Move away, students. In the distance, a purple cloud was swirling in the center of the concrete platform, with villains of all shapes and sizes walking out of it. Get to the exit. The students all went pale as Aizawa took a step forward. 13 waved her arms for the students to get moving, which immediately worked. All of them began to move towards the entrance of the building. All of them except for Izuku, who stayed still, eyeing the group of villains. In particular, there was a man with blue hair and white hands all over his body with a giant black creature behind him. Midoriya, I thought I told you to get to the entrance. Aizawa turned to face Izuku, who had a determined look on his face. No, I want to stay and help. Aizawa shook his head. I refuse. Now go join your classmates. But I wasn't asking, Midoriya. Aizawa's eyes met with Izuku and immediately chills went up and down Izuku's spine. His heartbeat tensed and suddenly Aizawa felt 10 times bigger. Why yes, Sensei Aizawa. Izuku hesitantly turned around and began to run after his classmates who had just about reached the entrance. Kurajiri, the blue-haired villain, started. I understand. The purple mist suddenly vanished and reappeared in front of the students, blocking them from the entrance. Bakugo yelled as he charged at the mist, releasing an explosion from each palm to launch himself in the air before releasing another explosion aimed for the center of the mist. Yet Kirishima followed closely behind, hardening his fists and cheering. The villain closely behind Bakugo. Wait, 13 yelled as Bakugo and Kirishima got close to the mist villain. Suddenly the mist spread and engulfed the entirety of Class 1, leaving them all in darkness. What the where are we? Bakugo and Kirishima looked around them, looking at their surroundings that had changed from a flat concrete plain to a collapsing city filled with flames. Bakugo yelled as he charged at the mist, releasing an explosion from each palm to launch himself in the air before releasing another explosion aimed for the center of the mist. Yeah, Kirishima followed closely behind, hardening his fists and cheering at the villain closely behind Bakugo. Wait, 13 yelled as Bakugo and Kirishima got close to the mist villain. Suddenly the mist spread and engulfed the entirety of Class 1A, leaving them all in darkness. What the? Where are we? Bakugo and Kirishima looked around them, looking at their surroundings that had changed from a flat concrete plain to a collapsing city filled with flames. Most of Class 1 had been spread throughout the USJ, save for Ada, Midoriya, and Ajiro, who all remained at the entrance. Where did everyone go? Ada yelled as the mist dissipated, moving to fight 13, who began to use her quirk to suck it up. Damn it, Aizawa thought as he charged down the stairs towards the villains. Meeting them halfway, he immediately began to fight them, making the use of his capture gear and his martial arts to knock them out one by one. Back at the entrance of the USJ, Ada, Midoriya, and Ajiro stared helplessly as the mist villain used 13 seconds quirk against her, severely injuring her in the process. What do we do? What do we do? Ada exclaimed. He had no idea what had just happened. Too much was going on at once. I think we should call for help. Midoriya's eyes darted from left to right. He had no idea what to do. His heart's pace began to pick up as he stared down the mist villain. Ada, Sensei Aizawa said that All Might would arrive shortly after us. If you can get out of here and meet him halfway, then he can get here quicker. But I can't just leave, Ada protested. More villains were coming out of the mist villain and were now approaching Ada, Ajiro, and Izuku. Just leave. One less classmate here won't make a difference. We need All Might and fast. Izuku looked back and over his shoulder at Ada, his jade orbs glaring into Ada's blue ones. Just go. Izuku planted his feet on the ground as he gripped onto his capture gear. Ajiro took his place next to Izuku and both boys stared at the incoming villains. What are you talking about? He's not going anywhere, one of the villains said, his lips curling into a creepy smile. 1, 2, 3, 4. Izuku's eyes darted from villain to villain as he counted them. He is my help, Ada. Go. Ajiro added while looking back at Ada. Fine, I'll go. Ada turned around and made a break for the door. The mist villain had vanished and returned to Shigaraki by this point, so it was no threat to him. You're not going anywhere, kid. A villain with a knife attempted to chase after Ada but was cut off by Izuku, who wrapped his capture gear around him and tripped him. I doubt that. Izuku proceeded to kick the villain in the face, knocking him out. Ajiro, I'd say we split them, but I think it's better to take them on one at a time. Yeah, Ajiro agreed as the villains closed in on them. Get the kid. A villain with giant fists yelled as he charged at Izuku and Ajiro, followed by two of the villains. One of them had a short sword for a hand and another had weird holes throughout his body. Izuku gripped onto his capture gear and dashed forward with Ajiro keeping up the same pace. I'll take the knife guy first. I think you should deal with the handyman. Ajiro nodded as Izuku jumped in the air as the man with giant hands attempted to punch him. Reacting quickly, Izuku stopped on the man's hand and used it as a platform to jump even higher. pushing the man's hand down just enough for Ajiro to hit him with his tail. Faz. Izuku swung his capture gear in an attempt to wrap it around the knife villain's hand but suddenly got sent flying by the villain with holes. In the meantime, the big-handed villain fought Ajiro, attempting to punch and catch the tailed boy who countered and attacked in response. Ada had made it out the door safely, which annoyed the villains. "You two are so dead," the handy villain yelled, swinging his fist at Ajiro with pure rage. Ajiro swung his tail, knocking the villain's hand away, following it up with a kick which the villain caught with his free hand. Ajiro took this as an opportunity and swung his free leg, hitting the villain in the stomach. Izuku, on the other hand, charged at the two villains that were now targeting him. His eyes dwelled on the villain with holes for a moment before he abruptly stopped running forward and started running in an arc around the two villains. "No matter what you try, kid, I'll cut you up," the villain yelled, charging at Izuku while the whole villain stood still, his eyes following Izuku's movement. "That's so." Izuku stopped running, his feet sliding on the ground as he gripped onto his capture gear and swung it, attempting to wrap it around the knife villain. Eras. A sudden gust of wind pushed the capture gear away from the knife villain, forcing Izuku to sidestep him, just barely avoiding a stab wound in the process. "Damn," Izuku thought as he pulled the loose capture gear back to himself. He changed his target to the whole villain, the one that had been yelling every time a gust of wind hit him so far. "Changing targets now, are we?" The knife villain yelled from behind Izuku as he rushed towards the whole villain. Faz. Another gust of wind suddenly hit Izuku in the gut, knocking the wind out of him. "Perfect," the knife villain yelled, charging at Izuku from behind. "Crap." Izuku's eyes darted to the knife villain as he turned to look behind him. "I've got you now," the villain yelled as his other hand turned into a knife while he charged at Izuku, who quickly performed the stop, drop, and roll tactic. Falling to the ground, Izuku rolled on the floor to the best of his ability in his winded state, receiving a cut to his right arm in the process. "What?" The villain looked at Izuku with annoyance as he charged at the boy again. Izuku continued rolling as the villain tried and tried again to stab him, missing by millimeters every time. "Stay still, you brat," the villain yelled as Izuku, who was starting to get nauseous, placed his right hand on the ground and used it to boost himself off the floor as he quickly got up and kicked the villain in the stomach, knocking him away. Eras. Another gust of wind shot at Izuku and knocked him off balance for a moment. "You'll pay for that," the knife villain yelled as he charged at Izuku. Not too far away, Ajiro was still facing the hand villain. "I'll beat you to a pulp," the villain yelled, taking another swing at Ajiro, who sidestepped and jumped into the air. While in the air, he twirled for a moment, knocking the villain right off of his feet with his tail. The boy didn't reply to the threats from the villain and instead focused on beating the villain, taking the brief moment of the villain being distracted to knock him out. Back with Izuku, he had a few more cuts and was now in between the knife villain and the whole villain again. "You just don't give up," the knife villain yelled while charging at Izuku, who stood still. His breath was hitched and his shoulders slouched. Izuku stared at the villain as he got closer and closer. "Why would I?" Izuku forced a smile while staring at the villain as he charged at him. The boy remained still as the villain got into close quarters. He was waiting for something. Faz. Time seemed to slow down for Izuku as the villain from behind him yelled. The knife villain was close to him, but not close enough to stab him. Closing his eyes, Izuku braced himself for impact as he suddenly let his legs give out from under him. "Gah!" the knife villain yelled as he was sent flying. The whole villain's eyes widened as he looked down at Izuku and then at his teammate that was now on his backside a few meters away. "That was close," Izuku said softly as he stood back up. His nose was now bloody, but the fall had woken him up. "Fuh." The whole villain began to talk when suddenly a large gust of wind knocked the doors to the USJ open, knocking the villains completely over, rendering them unconscious. Izuku looked in front of him with glee and relief as All Might stood proud and mighty by the staircase not too far ahead of him. "Do not fear, for I am here," All Might yelled, alerting everybody in the USJ. The number one hero stared down at the group of villains at the base of the staircase. All of them save for the blue-haired villain and the giant black creature had been defeated by Aizawa, who was now pinned to the ground. All Might dashed forward as everything suddenly became blurry to Izuku. His eyes narrowed as he took a brief step forward, his legs actually giving out from under him. "Midoriya," Ajiro yelled as he caught Izuku, repeatedly yelling the boy's name until he fell unconscious. "How is he doing?" Izuku faintly heard Aizawa's voice as his consciousness returned to him. "He has a concussion and is a bit drained, but he is completely fine now," Recovery Girl responded as Izuku opened his eyes and looked around him. It's a good thing that Ajiro brought him back when he did, or else Izuku would have died from the poison. "Poison?" Izuku whispered softly, alerting Recovery Girl and Aizawa to his awakening. "Yeah, kid, that knife villain had poison laced on his knife. You were lucky it only kicked in after All Might arrived." Aizawa wasn't showing it, but he was relieved to see his student awake and well. He was one bed over from Izuku, covered in bandages for the most part. "How is everyone?" "They are fine," Aizawa said softly, causing Izuku to smile. I'm glad. Izuku closed his eyes and let his smile run free for a short while. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed the last episode of What If Aizawa Trained Deku. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.